Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Eddie Jennings from EJSLLC.com. This video is going to be another in my RHCE practice session series where I'm preparing for the Red Hat Certified Engineer exam. Before I dive in, I want to thank returning subscribers for watching another video, as well as invite anyone who hasn't subscribed yet to click that subscribe button and ring the bell when you do, so you can be notified of when new content is available. Also, if you enjoy this video or find it useful, make sure you do click that like button, as well as share this video with others that might also find it useful. In this video, I'm going to start with the objective group work with roles, and there are only two objectives in this group. You have create roles and download roles from an Ansible Galaxy and use them. So what I'm going to do is have this particular video, which is going to be about creating the roles as well as talking a little bit about what roles are. And the next video, or the next objective, I might split into two, talking about Ansible Galaxy stuff as well as RHEL system roles. Even though there's nothing on the objective list that mentions RHEL system roles, all of the tutorials that I have worked with in my own preparation for RHCE always seems to mention them, and it might be one of those things like AutoFS that, even though it wasn't on the RHCSA objectives specifically, almost every tutorial I dealt with RHCSA talked about using AutoFS. So I figure it's probably worthwhile to know about, even if it's not on the exam, just to be generally knowledgeable about roles in Ansible. All that being said, I do try to have the information for you as accurate as possible, even though these are not intended to be authoritative in nature, nor are they intended to be tutorials. Rather, they're just opportunities for me to talk about the objectives to see if I feel confident about taking the exam. And if I do, great. If not, then I know what I need to look at between now and a couple of weeks from now. So diving right into it, talking about what roles are. I think I've said diving into it twice so far. You do enough of these, you start saying the same things over and over again. But anyway, so roles are a way of, I would say, making little packages of Ansible environments. And so what I mean by that, well, I have my control node. Actually, I have nothing in here because I have recently reverted to snapshot. But if you think about this, what I would have with my Ansible group, I'm going to have an inventory file. So let me go ahead and create an inventory file that I'll be using. I'll cat that to inventory. And what I may have in a project folder, so let's say this is all in its own little folder, which is going to be, and I'll have its own Ansible config file and such. I will probably have a folder that I will keep my templates in. And I'll probably have a folder where I might have my individual playbooks. Or I might have a folder where I have sets of tasks that I'm importing or including in playbooks. And I might have a folder where I will have my variables stored. I'll have them, stored in various files and such. And sometimes you have, your group vars and your host vars as far as kind of default files. The idea of a role is that you have all of this stuff put together, and it is composed in such a way that it can be reused, such as there are roles out there for deploying web servers and such, and the idea is you can use these roles and you on your own system would be able to deploy HTTPD or Nginx or said HTTPD. You can deploy Apache or Nginx and something like that, and it's stuff that can be reused. It's not bespoke to your specific system, and that's what we have with Ansible roles. So a couple of things I do want to mention is where Ansible looks for these roles. And by default, if I recall correctly, it's going to look for a folder in your current directory called roles, and it'll be looking in there for a particular folder structure, which we'll go over in a moment. And if that is not available, it will look for a roles folder that would be in your home directory in .ansible. And if it can't find roles there, it's going to look for etc Ansible roles. And I believe lastly, it's going to look at user share or user local share Ansible roles, I think. So one thing I'm going to do, see if this can verify it. I'm going to do Ansible Galaxy. I'm going to do list. Yep. So what this is saying is that this is where it's looking for the various roles, and this is just what I have default. I haven't made a separate Ansible.cfg. Notice it is complaining that this particular path does not exist. Now, even though Ansible Galaxy is going to be a part of another video, that is the command that we're going to be using to make the roles. So what I'm actually going to do is create a config file here, CFG, and we're going to make a couple of things under defaults. I'm going to specify my inventory. I'm going to specify roles path, and I'm going to say it's going to be home Ansible roles. I'm going to make actually I'm not going to make the directory yet, and let's do Ansible Galaxy list. All right, notice it says none of the provided paths were usable. Please specify a valid path with roles path. Because what I have specified in this ansible.cfg file is that home Ansible roles is a thing. And notice that it did not search in the other areas. I'm not 100% sure if this is how the config works, because a lot of configs in Ansible, if you don't have something, well, actually, no, this does make sense because I have specified roles path, so it wouldn't have anything to fall back to. So what I'm going to do here is make my directory of roles, and let's run Ansible Galaxy list, which if I had roles, it would be listing the roles. You can have multiple paths in this, so if I still wanted to include the default paths, I'm actually going to go up here and copy this real quick, and let's go into our config file. We can separate those, I believe, with colons, so let's do that. All right, and let's do Ansible Galaxy list, and we see that it's checking the various locations. Now the curious thing, and this I'm not 100% sure about, so it looks like in the order that we put that here. So just for giggles, I'm going to put this before user share. I want to make sure that need to go into insert mode. Now I want to make sure that that does affect the order where it's looking. And it does. You see user share and then Etsy Ansible have been swapped as far as that. So the thing to know about your roles is that you the default areas, and then if you do specify in your config file the role directory that you want to use, if you want to use the default role directory, or rather have Ansible be able to leverage the default roles and such, then you can add that to the path. There is one thing I do remember from the Sander Van Vogt book. He warns a bit against putting custom roles, especially in user share Ansible roles, because apparently if you install a role and there's no place for it to go, that's where the role is going to. Not sure if that's 100% true as far as that will be the default installation area for roles, but if you think about it, it kind of makes sense that it would be, because user share is where a lot of that kind of stuff goes. So enough of the background. The idea of roles are these little compartmentalized, I guess, little Ansible environments, and then the path for that. Let's create a role. And the way that we're going to do this is with the Ansible Galaxy command. We're going to say init and then our role name. So let's just call this role name HTTPD. All right, and it says HTTPD was created successfully. Now notice that HTTPD was put into our current directory. If I were to do Ansible Galaxy list, I don't think it's actually going to appear in the list. Nope, it was not. So I'm actually going to remove this directory, because really all that role is the directory. I'm going to cd into my actual roles folder and Ansible Galaxy init HTTPD. All right, it says it was created successfully. Now if I were to do Ansible Galaxy list, that should be there. Oh, I know why it's not, because in the directory that I'm in, there is no config file, and so therefore it's going to look for our various default config files, and the default config files aren't aware of this home Ansible roles. So now if I were to run Ansible Galaxy list, it should be there. Yep, HTTPD, and it says unknown version. So if I were to go into my roles in HTTPD directory, we see a whole slew of folders. Now you don't have to have all of these in here, and I'm pretty sure you can create them yourselves, but I recommend, and I believe Ansible documentation recommends, that to make a new role and its directory tree, you're going to want to use the Ansible Galaxy init for that. So talking about these individual directories just a bit, there's a good bit of documentation and such available that's kind of built into these. And if you were to cat readme.markdown, it will tell you an example of how to call the role, and it also talks about dependencies, which you would need to know. Another thing that you can do is if you were to, and this is a little ahead of the scope of the video, but if you were to download a role from Ansible Galaxy, which I imagine that we're going to obviously have access to for the RHCE exam, since the objective explicitly says download a role from Ansible Galaxy, you can use that as a guide. But we're going to walk through this real quick. We're going to start with the tasks folder. So if I were to cd into tasks, we see that there is a main.yaml file. So let's vi that. And what this is going to be are different tasks that your HTTPD role is going to be. And this is going to be in YAML format, such as we will probably have a task that would be, we'll name the task. Now notice I'm not doing anything about a play. These are just tasks. So this would be install the package. So, not name yum. Yum's the name of the module we're going to use. And we'll do HTTPD state present. Now what you can do are create more tasks files. So let's say that we have one that we're going to call start the service.yml, and this is going to be start HTTPD and enable. And notice I'm not doing a full playbook. I'm just making a task here as far as how the indentation and such works. Name HTTPD, state started, and enabled yes. So if I were to go back to my main.yml, I can add a task here, and I'm pretty sure I'm doing this right. Let's see. Do the needful for HTTPD. And I'll say import. I think you can use include as well. Tasks. And I'm going to say, what was the name of that? Start the service. That's it. Start the service.yml. And so at this point, when you call the role, it's going to do the first task, and then the second task, it's going to import or actually it might import the tasks ahead of time, but not execute them until then. But basically, it's going to use what's in main, and it's going to grab whatever else is in your tasks folder that main tells it to go to. And from what I've seen from some roles, sometimes main doesn't really do much at all. All main does is call various other tasks files at various times depending on your conditions, such as if you're making a role to install Apache, you would probably want to have a condition that for Debian-based systems, you're trying to grab HTTPD Apache 2, and then for Red Hat-based systems, you're going to be grabbing HTTPD. And so your main's just going to have the where statements and such to dictate which tasks run at which time. So another directory that we're going to look at is the templates directory. And notice there is nothing in the templates directory. So the idea here is if you were to have different little template files that you want your role to use, you can dump them in this directory. And so we're going to make a quick little template file here. I'm just going to call it foo.j2, and all this is going to do is this is a template. So super simple file. Well, one thing that we're going to find here, let's go back into our tasks and main. We're going to run two more tasks, and I'm going to show you something that I'm pretty sure is true all the time about the templates. So name, create the first test file, and so we're going to use the template module source, and I'm just going to say foo.j2. I'm not going to give it the path to the template, and destination is going to be temp or tmp foo1.txt, and then I'm going to say create the second test file, template source templates foo.j2 dest, it's going to be tmp foo2.txt. Now within the vars file we have the same idea. You can store your variables there. So the thing is, I'm not sure if vars is going to work without actually having to do the path. So we can put that to the test here. Let's go into vars. We have another main.yml. So let's vi main. This vars for HTTPD, and let's make a variable of hello. And we're going to we're going to set this value to here's the hello variable. All right, so let's go back to our tasks. I'm just doing all the stuff in main here. Show a variable. We use the debug module for this, just as a quick little thing. Hello, and what we're going to, I don't think I need to actually declare variables with this, because I believe what it's going to do is read the file that is in our vars directory and just get the value of hello from that. Now you do have defaults. Let's go into the defaults directory real quick and vi main. This you can set variables and such as well. I believe the way the precedent works is stuff in defaults is kind of designed to be overwritten either by the vars directory or the playbook itself, or specifically by the playbook. I'm not 100% sure on that, and so therefore that's something I'm going to need to review before the exam. The files piece. This, I would imagine if there are some files that you need to copy over, this is where you can have those in that structure. Oh, I'm in the defaults directory. Let's go up one, cd into files. Yeah. Now, meta is kind of interesting. Oh, by the way, files, I'm going to note that on my little list of I need to do a little bit of research to make sure I fully understand exactly how the files directory should work. Some of the examples I've done, I've mainly been using templates, so I need to do some examples with files as well. Let's go into the meta folder. And in meta, if we were to vi main.yml, you're going to see a lot of information here. This is interesting as far as you can specify information about your roles, and you can specify dependencies. Let's say that you have several roles, each with a little specialized task, and then you have your role here that's installing Apache. And the Apache role, you need to have some things from some of these other roles in order for it to be done. This is where you would list your dependencies. So you'd have you do a list dash space role, name of the role. You can also set some variables here that will be passed into the role. The thing to remember is I'm fairly sure these dependencies, so you have your playbook that's going to call your role, and then your role is going to have dependencies. These dependency roles are all going to complete their running first, and then your role is actually going to run, and then whatever else is going on in your playbook that called the role is going to happen. Let's see, we have handlers. Let's go into handlers real quick. And just like with tasks, you can specify handlers, which of course you can notify with your task. The tests directory, let's go into that for a moment. This I have not used yet with my testing, and this, I believe, the idea here is it gives you a way of perhaps maybe doing like a dry run of your role. Let's cat the test.yml. Yeah, so that's basically a playbook. And okay, so this is the playbook. If you were to write a playbook using the role, this is what you would have here. You would have your host, you would have, whatever other keywords that you need, and then you would have roles, and then list your HTTPD role. As far as actually making use of tests, that's something that I'm going to need to brush up on between now and the exam, because I'm drawing a blank on like the specific use cases for that particular directory, even though I do know it's just designed for testing, hence the name, but I want to know a little bit more about that. So I think we've touched pretty much every one of the directories, with a couple needing some more information just for my part to be able to use. So let's go back to our standard directory here. We're going to make a playbook. We're just going to call it httpd.yml. And all we're going to do in this playbook is practice calling roles. So host, we'll just do this against the one host. Become is yes. And roles, I guess I need to do role : I think so. Or I guess I could just do HTTPD. So I think that's all I need to do. So when in doubt, let's put it to the test and see what happens. All right, so looks like it's running that first task with main, which is installing the package, and that's going to take a moment or so. We see that it didn't complain about syntax, so we know that just that roles is right. All right, so it's running that extra task file we made. It's making our first task file and second file, and it found our variable without actually having to say vars and the place where in the file where the variable is. Now let's do ls. Actually, we'll do the Ansible way. We will do lab rel an01a. Actually, we'll do the shell command cat tmp foo star. All right, and so we have two. This is a templates, and so it found the template file without actually needing to say templates and the template file. Now, one of the questions that should come up in your head if you're preparing for this is talking about variable precedence. So we had the variable that was in the role itself, right? So what I'm curious is if I were to do our playbook here, and I'm actually going to set a variable named hello. I'm going to say from the playbook. I'm curious to see which hello is used, because off the top of my head, I can't remember. And while we're waiting on this to go through, it probably would be worthwhile on the exam, even though you would probably want to delete these before you finish your exam. But you might want to make a playbook or so just for testing some kind of one-off things like this. So it did not use the variable that was in the play. So what I'm going to do now is, let's go back into the play or the playbook. I'm actually going to comment this out, and we're going to go back into our role actually. So roles, httpd, vars, main.yml. I don't want to remove it. Let's just edit it. And what we're going to do is actually add that to defaults. Hello, and we'll put this is from defaults. All right, we'll run our playbook again that has the role. It should still display what we need for the debug message. Yep, and now we're going to go back into our playbook and we're going to uncomment the vars hello. And if I am correct, this is going to take precedent over the defaults. And it looks like that's exactly what happened. So I would say for this particular objective, creating roles, I'm going to consider this a pass for myself. I think I'd be able to handle that on the exam. There are a couple of details that I just personally want to be a little bit more knowledgeable of, and I mentioned those in the video, and I'll put that on my list of stuff to look at. But overall, I think I'm fairly well prepared for the basic creation of roles and have a decent understanding of the use of roles and then how you would call them in a playbook. So I hope you found this video useful for you. Again, it's not intended to be a tutorial, but rather just me trying to do a self-assessment, and perhaps with your own studies for RHCE, if you're at this point and your knowledge of roles seems to be about equal with mine, then perhaps you yourself will consider yourself prepared. Or if you don't have any scale to go off of, maybe seeing what I'm able to do with this kind of gives you an idea of at least what basic knowledge looks like. If you did enjoy this, make sure you do click like on the video. Also, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure you do click that subscribe button. And I want to thank once again returning subscribers for watching another video. Feel free to leave comments. You can ask questions or leave critique or leave praise. I'll respond to it as I have both time and ability, which means I'm probably not going to get to everything, but I'll get to as much as I can. Thanks again for taking the time to watch, and I'll see you the next time.